Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned?
Welcome. We all do it. We all have to do it. Some of us love to do it, and others don't like it at all. What am I talking about? I'm talking about cooking. And with me is a chef from Butter Restaurant. Her name is Alexandra Guraschelli. And I would like to welcome Alexandra.
Thank you
so much for
My
being
pleasure.
here. It's wonderful. When did you first discover that you wanted to be a chef?
You know, I always liked to cook, and I grew up in a house where, I'd be sort of underneath the dining room table with my Lego set, and my mother would coax me out and say, we're going to bake bread today, we're going to assemble cakes, we're going to make a 12-layer cake, we're going to make a lasagna with 14 types of cheese. And so I sort of had that humming sort of in the background of my childhood. I also really love to eat. But in college, there really wasn't much of a need to cook.
Right.
I lived in dorms, I ate at the dining hall. I never thought about being a chef at all. Occasionally I would bake a batch of muffins or a cake or whatever, but I really didn't do it at all. But the day I graduated from college, I woke up in the morning and I said to myself, by the end of today, you are going to answer one question, which is, what do you most love to do? And you're going to be that.
And the question came up with what answer?
The best answer I could give myself at that very point in my life was that my favorite thing to do recreationally that I could imagine earning some type of living from, which was maybe somewhat off course, was cooking. And so immediately after graduating from college, I volunteered to work for free. That's not hard. For a very high profile at that time American chef Larry Forgione, who you may have heard of, who owned a restaurant called An American Place, which was on 32nd Street and Park Avenue South.
Right. I remember that restaurant.
Yes, and I was a Midtown Manhattan girl. That's where I grew up. So I would get up from my parents' apartment. I would get up and walk with a mug of coffee. I would walk down 20 blocks to the restaurant and work, 14, 16, whatever number of hours every day for free, just trying to figure out if it was something that I really wanted to do.
What was it like being an apprentice?
It was awful, pretty much.
Okay.
Sort of in that glorious way, where you know that you feel you're most alive. I saw a movie the other day and the guy said, I'm most alive when confronted by death. And I thought that was a little, over the top. But I like the idea that in our awfulness comes the most beautiful things. I really do kind of believe that. And I think that if you do things that make you feel nervous and give you butterflies and whatever else, that you're really doing something life-affirming, and that later on you'll appreciate that. And so I knew that, but what was really hard was to be educated. I mean, I had a college degree. I thought I was pretty smart. I thought I was pretty much the smartest person in the world. I mean, I was 21 years old, so I thought I was. I had nothing to learn. I was really excited about myself. And I was mistaken, and it was a real lesson in humility, and it was really hard. It was a lot of humble pie to eat every day. Going in with a group of people, all of them men, all of them lovely. I was very lucky.
But how did they treat you as a woman apprentice?
They were so nice to me. Now, I had really more than one apprenticeship.
Okay.
So that was, I don't even call that an apprenticeship because I had no skills whatsoever. I mean, none. So they treated me, they welcomed me, and I think I was sort of a mascot and an object of whimsy kind of thing. And I had a really great time. I learned a lot. And by the end, I really, after about a year, I really kind of had a few basic things under my belt, not much.
Now, wait a minute. You worked as an apprentice for a year for no pay.
Let's see. I think after about 6 or 7 or 8 months, I got paid a few dollars an hour.
Okay.
So I did eventually get paid, but Larry, wonderful man that he is, encouraged me to travel. He said, go to France. Go get a culinary degree in some school in France and come back in 5 years. Don't stay here.
Wow.
And, you're flattered and horrified. You don't know if he's trying to get rid of you or complimenting you by telling you what he thinks you should do. But I got the Shaw Guide to Culinary Schools, which whenever people ask me, how should I go about this field?
Exactly.
Start by buying, it's like $9.99 at Barnes & Noble, and it comes out every year. And it is a little book, and it is, there's a page or 2 or 3 on all the culinary schools of all types all over the world. And so I thumbed this book. I mean, it's amazing how these arbitrary decisions dictate so much later on. And I found this little culinary school that had a work-study program in Burgundy in France.
Ooh, nice place.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't really want to pay all that money until I know I want to do this. And I was still so I applied for a work-study program, which, by the way, just FYI, in cooking, work-study means dishes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just a heads up, in case you decide to meander.
No. No.
You like your life the way it is. Applied and got accepted to a 9-month program, at the end of which I would receive a diploma, which I liked. But more than that, I would get to live in France. I didn't have to pay, and all I had to do was work in this culinary school. And
did you learn the language while you were over there?
Everybody asks me that from the get-go, and I think it's because people can't imagine immersing themselves in a field of work as intense as cooking without a command of the language. And I have to say that is with good reason, because I took French in high school and in my first year of college, but then I
dropped it
like a hot potato, and didn't speak a word for the next 3 years of college and the year after that. So I went to France, and the chef was away, and I caught about 4 words, and then day 2 about 8, and day 3 12, and yeah, that was really painful. I had a lot of headaches the first 2 years, literally physical headaches from straining to read the lips, because that's what it's all about. I mean, if you don't have a good command, then you just look at the lips and you nod and you're transfixed. And so, I had my bottle of Tylenol and my lip reading, and that's what I really wrote on for like 2 years. But after I got that degree in culinary arts from La Varenne, I called my mother kind of blubbering from the laundromat in the middle of nowhere in Burgundy, like, I want to go home. And she said, my author has a relationship with a wonderful 2-star Michelin chef in Paris. I'll get you a plane ticket, you can come home and get a job and whatever, but why don't you go there and just work for a couple days before you come home?
Isn't that exciting?
It was, it horrified me as a thought, because I thought that's going to be really nerve-wracking to really, the big dogs in Paris and 2 Michelin stars, and
this is the big time.
Yeah, it felt, like I'm going to be in the show. I'm going from the farm team to the Yankees kind of thing. And so I went up to Paris, and it took me a few days to find, to get the restaurant and get an appointment and all that. So I went in and I worked for 2 days. Now, I just want to say that I was engaged to be married at that time to a nice American fellow from Georgia, and we were going to get married and open a restaurant in Atlanta.
Who's going to do the cooking?
That hadn't yet been decided, because we were both chefs, and so for that reason, I'm happy to tell you that things didn't at all go that way. But after 2 days of being in the kitchen, the chef and the owner, the proprietor, I should say, was not in the kitchen for those 2 days. And so I was working with a group of people, but I didn't realize that sort of the main character in the play wasn't present. And so I just assumed that the environment was the way it was. And so my 3rd and last day, I found myself sort of sad that I wasn't going to go back the next day. And I had my plane ticket, I was going to go home, and there were so many more things pulling me home than keeping me there. And I was sleeping on my friend's couch. But in he walked. His name's Guy Savoy. Mm-hmm. He now has 3 Michelin stars.
Oh, nice.
But in he walked, and he said, "My kitchen is your kitchen. Welcome. I hear you've been here 2 days." And he spent the day, knocking around in the kitchen with him. And I don't know, I think I kind of found, my first true mentor and hero in life. And based on that one-day experience, I stayed there for 5 years. I started dating one of the guys in the kitchen. Eventually, I was living with him for years. We were really kind of married ourselves.
And what happened to your fiance?
I called him up and I said, I'm sorry, but offered me Derek Jeter's job, and I really can't say no. It wasn't quite Derek Jeter's job. It was more like Derek Jeter's bat boy's assistant.
Mm-hmm.
But, eventually, after a few years of cooking, I mean, just by sheer diligence, I got promoted because they got sick of looking at me. It's like, all right, go over there now. All right, go over there now. Because I just wouldn't take no for an answer and wouldn't leave.
You were a trooper through and through.
Yeah, big time. I did a lot of crying in the bathroom. I did a lot of weeping in the bathroom. I did a lot of...
Did you weep because of the way they were treating you? You didn't understand the language?
It's the reason I cried so much, and I'm open about that. Years later, when I worked at Danielle in New York, to this day, he teases me that I cried every day. First of all, I'm an anxiety-ridden person, but also I'm an incredibly passionate person, which is actually what Danielle told me, and which I really carry close to my heart. I just had such a desire to be good at the craft, and such a hard time mastering the skills. It takes so long to master the skills. I don't feel I've yet mastered a lot. I just, I wanted so much to be good at it, and I really was kind of clunky and klutzy.
Were you trying to overcompensate because you really didn't have any training in a...
I had no business being there, and I knew that. I didn't have any of the skills.
Okay.
And it was sort of like, guys, I've read Milton's Paradise Lost here. Why is this not helping me at all? Why is the fact that, I know Madonna with the long neck was painted by Parmigianino. Why aren't any of these things at all helpful when cleaning spinach? That was a painful thing, and at that time, I tell you, it was unusual. I mean, to graduate from Barnard with a degree in art history and become a chef was, even at that time, it wasn't that long ago, it was sort of like preposterous to career services that I was choosing this.
It was unheard of.
It was not fancy schmance when I started out at all. It's really changed a lot. And, some for the worse, some for the better.
What is your favorite kitchen appliance?
I have I know this is going to sound sort of basic. I really want to say to you, I have this. I have a VitaPrep blender. It's about $385 without tax. It's the blender that makes the Frappuccinos at Starbucks, just to give a visual, because we've all seen that Starbucks, those Frappuccino blenders.
Right.
It broke one day, and it was only then that I realized that this is the answer to your question, because I felt myself kind of getting the shakes, like, how am I going to make this? How am I going to make that? I mean, I don't even necessarily puree everything, but it's just being able to smooth things out, smooth edges. You make dressings, you make soups, you make sauces, everything. I ran down to the Bowery and bought another one. I couldn't even wait to send it in to be fixed. I was like, no, I need it. I mean, I went down to the guy like, give me my fix. I need a new blender. So I have to say that probably be the most honest answer. It's not the fanciest, chefiest answer, but truth be told, I can't function without it. I can't breathe with it when that thing's broken. And whenever anybody kind of nicks it or whatever, they look at me and I'm like, don't. If you're going to break something, break a stack of plates. Don't break the blender.
How do you create a new recipe?
Hard to come up with a combination.
Okay.
And it's especially hard in those contesty type of things, because you're not just it's not just you that needs to be satisfied with what you've assembled. You are playing to an audience, and so there's a slant to it that changes what you decide to make, I think. I did a competition recently for a veal.
Uh-huh.
And had it been just a straight veal competition and not for the veal board and the potato board and et cetera, I'm sure that a million things would have poured forth from me just naturally, based on the things I love, based on the things I grew up eating and loving, based on what's seasonal at the green market, the types of things that dictate the dishes I put on my menu now. But because I felt I was really working to please a specific group of people, it completely changed around what I decided to do, which is not a bad thing. It's impossible to avoid that in a restaurant setting either, because I'm not cooking for myself. Well, you have a dilemma as a chef, really, I think, and the dilemma is, if you don't necessarily jive with the audience of your restaurant completely, or if you don't know what your audience is, or you're looking to change it, or you don't know what it's going to become, then you don't really know what to make because you don't know who you're actually seeking to please. And that's when, and at least I'm describing my own personal odyssey, because this is a never-ending question. What to make and what decides what you make. Really, that's our biggest question at all times. That's the existential chef's planet.
A lot at the green market.
Massive, massive green market shopper. Totally in love with all the farmers and what they do. Just enamored with dirt-covered vegetables and the people that grow them. And the people that are, psycho crazy running around a farm trying to make something beautiful come out of the earth and at the mercy of the weather and all those other things. You have to understand that when you're a chef or you do something that's so physically demanding, you look to other fields of work to see who works harder than you do, to keep yourself in check, to not get into the woe is me, I'm Rapunzel in the tower and only I work and if only I could let my hair down. I look at fishermen, I look at people that are digging in Alaska for those crabs. I look at people that when there's 18 consecutive days of rain at the height of the tomato season and what doesn't get ruined by tomatoes gets ruined by blight, I just look at the guy like, wow, you're at the mercy of something so much bigger than the public opinion or your own opinion or whoever is dictating, what you do. You're at the mercy of the earth.
And Mother Nature.
Yeah, she's the boss.
Green market.
Yeah.
How would you empower women?
A lot of the farmers are not certified organic at the green market, and I don't really think that that's the end-all be-all. It costs a lot of money to be able to call your farm organic. Mm-hmm. Some farmers don't have that kind of cash lying around, and I don't fault them for that. I seek the vegetables that smell the best. I seek the soil. I like to see the quality of the soil. I'm a little bit mentally ill when it comes to vegetables. I see a tremendous amount of women, both food service professionals, urban professionals, and even, moms. I love seeing mothers with their children at the green market. I can't tell you how that makes me feel like, the world is coming full circle to see a woman with her baby or child digging through a bin, picking out the perfect beet. I mean, I don't mean to sound corny, but, I go to the green market kind of like this, chef psycho killer. I've got to get in and get all this stuff and pick the best, but that'll stop me in my tracks.
A woman look for when she's in the green market? I mean, how does she tell the best?
First of all, just walk. I would say to anyone, begin at one end of the green market and walk through it before you buy anything. It's really easy to see something sexy, get all jazzed up and go over there and buy a ton of it. Uh-huh. Definitely take a walk through and assess everything visually yourself because, my first chef said to me, people eat with their eyes. Before they pick up the fork and smell or taste anything, it starts with
visual.
Locking eyes with the plate. What's on the plate? Is it inviting? Vegetables, produce at the green market, it's very much the same thing. I would say you can really see that the vegetables that are fresher, they're brighter, they're more sprightly, they're firmer. Some of the vegetables are so fresh, they buckle up. It's really and you can, and if you touch them, you can feel it. I know it sounds corny, but it's as if they're still alive. They're still breathing. I touch those carrots and they go, yes.
Pick me, pick me.
Yeah, and I understand it's difficult, but also developing relationships with farmers. The organic farms can be very expensive, and there are a lot of great farmers that don't spray, that aren't organic, but that don't spray.
How does one eat healthy in a restaurant?
You don't. I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay.
First of all, you overeat in a restaurant, no matter what you tell yourself when you're getting dressed. I'm not going to have any bread. I'm not going to have any wine. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to have a salad.
Because I always see food tastes too salty for me.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because I think a lot of chefs' palates, when you cook a lot and you're constantly tasting and using your mouth, you tend to really have an affinity for acidity. When I say acidity, I mean anything from lemon juice to vinegar to port to sherry. And actually, one night I made a salad for a very VIP chef that came to eat at Danielle, and I agonized over this seemingly mixed green salad. You know, that's tough. A fancy schmancy chef comes into a fancy schmancy restaurant and orders a mixed green salad. You're like, order the sweetbreads with, you know, chausson, whatever else. And so he ordered a mixed green salad. It was sort of like a
letdown?
No. I found it kind of funny. I mean, here we were, 80 million people waiting for his order, and he ordered a mixed green. Fine. My favorite thing, actually, a good mixed green salad. So I agonized. I mean, this was it really was beautiful. Sent it out. And once a plate like that's gone, you just move on to the next thing and you don't really think about it. And that's something you train yourself to do, to let go of food. It's another thing about food. It's if you want to call it an art form, it's an art form that disappears from your view. And that's it. It's like, imagine if artists made paintings, and as soon as the last stroke, or maybe not, was on the canvas, somebody just whisked it away and you never saw it again. The salad came back.
It came back?
Yeah, about 10 minutes later. And I'd made 80 plates since then.
Right.
But the salad came back, and you know.
What happened?
So we go over, and it had been fork kind of raked over.
Yeah.
You could tell, disassembled. And maybe 2 or 3 bites had been eaten, and there was like a forkful of salad on the top of the salad, as if he just put the fork down and said, I'm not going to have any more. And so the maitre d' came darting in, followed by a posse of 80 people, and there's now a gathering of 80 cooks all over this mixed green salad. There were like 100 people standing over this. It was like a town hall meeting. Maitre d' came in to hand down the decision to the high courts. Monsieur said it was too salty. And I thought, I'm dead. You know, I heard the theme song from Mission Impossible in my head. I'm like, where can I hide? I'm gonna go hide in the oven.
So it's too salty.
So he took a bite. It was Danielle. He took a bite of the salad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're just incredulous that somebody didn't like something in your restaurant and you have to sort of process it yourself. I actually appreciated that he didn't just turn around and start screaming at me, but assessed it on his own first. That takes a big man to act like that.
That was pretty good.
He's a stand-up guy, Danielle. He really is, through and through. So he took a bite of it, and he turned to me, and I thought,
that's it.
I'm over. And he said, the salad isn't too salty. Very matter-of-factly and calmly. He said, the salad's not too salty. He said, the vinaigrette has a little bit too much vinegar in it.
Ah.
He said, and you always have to be careful with that. He said, because vinegar can be like salt on the tongue.
Ah.
People mistake over-acidic things for salt. He said, just don't put any salt in the salads from now on. We'll just let the vinegar speak for itself. And that was it. I went home that night and I wrote down what he said. I mean, it really became something I live by. It sounds like a silly little thing.
It's important.
It's massive how simplistic and all-encompassing that lesson was for me. And he did it in such a gentlemanly way. And so to this day, I don't put any salt in my salads. I just put a little dressing. But you have to understand something about eating light in restaurants. I mean, let's just mention one single fact. I'm just going to throw one at you. Last year I started working with a nutritionist for myself to learn how to eat better. Now, for a chef to turn herself into a nutritionist, it's a little embarrassing.
Pretty good.
She said when I walked in, you're a chef, what are you doing here? And I said, but the people that, it's like what you're submerged in all day long is what you're bad at for your own life. I never realized that olive oil has 120 calories a tablespoon. One tablespoon.
You're kidding.
No, 1 tablespoon of olive oil has 120 calories, 120 of which are fat calories.
Just
so
olive oil.
1 tablespoon of olive oil is 120 pure fat, 100% fat in your body. Now look, I understand that if you're going to eat a 2-pack of Hostess cupcakes versus a tablespoon of olive oil, which one is better for you, I'm not disputing. But if you want to talk about weight gain and calorie counting, and when is that not on women's minds? I hate to say it, but it's part of our culture.
That's very interesting.
Just a little gem, that bottle of olive oil.
What ingredients would you suggest for somebody to have in their pantry? Just a basic pantry, doesn't really cook, comes home from work, wants to throw something together. What things do you think somebody should have?
I think mustard's a really good thing.
Mustard?
Smooth and grainy. Maybe a
Okay.
flavored if there's something you like, because you can do a lot of things with it. You can throw a teaspoon of it in with a steak and make a little sauce with a little leftover red wine. You didn't finish the bottle.
Right.
You can make a sandwich. You can make a wonderful dip to go with vegetables. You can make a salad dressing. You can make a lot of different things. I would say spices. You don't want to get too kooky with the spices. I say buy a couple of kinds of vinegar, a can of tomatoes, a can of roasted peppers. That's a really good thing to have. I would say ready-made, really high-quality vegetables, just a can of each, really opens up your horizons. And then you don't feel so intimidated. If you load your pantry with spices, you just kind of sit there. You know, you have to eat the spice somewhere else and be exposed to it on the back end, and
Right.
then back into buying it and using it yourself. So I see a lot of people with a lot of spice racks, and I kind of have a little giggle to myself because I think, buy a can of every different kind of vegetable. Buy some kooky thing you've never had, hearts of palm, and you can open it up and throw it into a salad.
Love
and
'em.
yeah, it's delicious, and it's there for you, and it's something unique, and people think you've gone the extra mile, and you opened a can, you drained something. You have those couple kinds of vinegar and a little mustard, you make a dressing. People think you're the cats. People think you're a chef.
What would you like to leave the audience with?
I guess I'd just like to say that there are a lot of people out there that I think have a real burning desire to become chefs.
Mm-hmm.
And I love every one of them because it's amazing and they're really right on the money to want to do it. But I would just say go and work in a kitchen for a while. Just knock on a door, find a way. Even go to the restaurant where you eat dinner 2 or 3 times a week, or the maitre d' or a waiter, and just say to the chef, hey, I don't want anything out of this. I just want to come in and work for a day or 2 and check it out and see if your blood races and if your stomach tingles like you were 18 again. If it does, I say go to culinary school.
Alexandra, thank you so much. It's
pleasure.
been wonderful hearing how you feel about food and the culinary world at large.
Thank you.
And I hope you've learned something. Do you want to be a chef? Love to hear from you. Write us here at The Woman's Connection. Bye now.